Welcome to Life Planning 101, brought to you by Kennedy Financial Services of Eastland. Tune in every Monday morning at 8:30 on KATX and KWBY, and again on Saturday morning at 9 on KATX and KWBY as Angela Robinson joins Terry Slavens to share important financial information to help you live life on purpose. Insurance, investments, estate and tax planning, and much more. All covered now on Life Planning 101.
A very pleasant good Monday morning, everyone. Welcome into Life Planning 101 right here on KATX KWBY. And as always, we have Angela Kennedy Robinson with us. Good morning, Angela.
Good Monday morning. Yes, I hope that you have had time to breathe this weekend and recover from last week's chaos. It's interesting. I was listening to a lot of people like on the shows and stuff, and they were talking about having anxiety. And I think it's a real thing. And, you know, I think we can all say the prayer that they say in AA right now that, you know, God help me understand that I can't control these things and move on. And we need to. And, you know, the reality is we are where we are. And we aren't going to know anymore until, you know, that electoral college goes to vote and we have some solidification. I think
which is in December.
That's right. No matter what side of the aisle you're sitting on, you need to wait for that and see how things pan out. And furthermore, we're really not going to know anything till January because we have a Georgia election with 2 runoffs for 2 senator seats. And, you know, I will say today we're going to talk about the election results, but we're not going to be talking about it in the way of politics. We're going to be talking about it in the way of you.
Right.
Your next steps, what you need to be thinking for your personal situation. Because I think you can get overwhelmed and wrapped up in what is around you. But, you know, the reality is if you're not focusing on taking care of yourself, you may miss the boat entirely. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I heard a great quote yesterday. Stephen Furtick, he said, the more knowledge we have, the less wisdom we have.
That can be very true at times.
Yeah, it can, right? And I think that's what
information overload.
That's right. I think we have too much information right now, and it's making wisdom go out the door. And you can't do that. You absolutely can't do that. This is a very critical time in planning history. Okay, when I'm talking planning history, we work on the 8 life planning issues. We help people live life on purpose to be able to make sure that their family's taken care of, their charitable inclinations are taken care of. If they want to sell their business or transition it to the next generation, that's taken care of. Help them with their legacy planning, their tax issues so that it doesn't eat it into too much of their lifestyle, their investments, their insurance, and their debt. And that's what we're talking about because these elections have massive impacts on all that planning. So what does that mean for you? What do you need to be doing here and now to be able to make sure things are happening going forward? And, you know, as I sat here and wrote this show, and it still appears this way, and I think it's what the markets are seeing, right? If we look at the markets over the last week, they've obviously liked the results of the election. And really what they like is the prospect of gridlock in Washington.
Right.
There's a high prospect of gridlock in Washington. If the Senate maintains, you know, the Republican majority, then that means there's really not a lot of policy in the way of these major planning items that's going to be coming out of Washington over these next 2 years. And so, you know, what we saw last week was a run up in the markets primarily due to that. There were some obviously other factors probably, but primarily that's what's going on. So what does that mean for you? It means you need to be saying the same thing as the markets. It means that you need to be saying, I've got a 2-year clock to get a lot of stuff done. I've been given a gift of 2 years because had everything gone blue, and we talked about this before the election, and this is not to be partisan. When we're talking about planning issues, we're talking about successful people. Right? Sure. Successful people have success issues. And a lot of that boils down to the tax code. Well, we all know what the two sides want with the tax code. So even if you're thinking, well, I'm just a middle class millionaire, but you have a retirement nest egg, that retirement nest egg is seen as upper middle class. So it's going to be hit, and you have to realize that. You can't be blindsided or blind to the fact that that couldn't happen. Okay, so it's not to be partisan. This is simply to state the facts that if it's red or blue means higher or lower taxes,
Sure.
right? So, and a lot of planning comes around that taxes. Now, healthcare, for example, that's going to have an impact. Gridlock is going to have an impact on that. Investments, obvious impact, right? Because things aren't going to be down the same Trump train that they were these last few years, but it's going to be going a different route. I mean, we saw the world rally last week. Why did the world rally? Because now they see opportunity where they didn't have opportunity if Trump were elected. So, there's always movement for being able to invest your money. It's just a matter of being able to do it proactively. And again, when you have that knowledge, too much information, wisdom's going to go out the door. So you can't do that to yourself. You can't overwhelm yourself with all these facts and all these things coming at you. You need to hire a professional that's going to help you make wise decisions. I was visiting with a family up in Montana, in I guess early October, and they said, we're just scared. We've never done this before. We've never sold our business before. And I said, yeah, that's right. You never have. We've been helping people sell businesses for over 30 years, and we've done it time and time again. So it's not just our experiences. It's being able to do it over and over again through the experiences of the clients that we work with, right? And to see those pitfalls. And you don't have to do the job alone. And I think that's where we get on this isolation island, this anxiety island, that we have to do this job alone. And we absolutely don't have to do that. There's tons of help out there if you just ask for it, right? Banking is probably going to change. And so there are things that you probably need to be thinking about in that world. And estate planning, we've talked about that over and over and over again. And I can't express to you how critical it is that you get your estate house in order. And I'm not just talking about if you have a large estate. Last year, with the Republican House or Republican Senate, we ended up pushing out legislation called the Secure Act that mandates that your IRA is going to be pushed out within 10 years after you die and taxed within those 10 years. Well, that's a significant tax change from what it was before. Significant to the meaning that the IRS is going to get paid a lot more, right? So estate planning doesn't mean that you have to be just mega wealthy. And depending on if the Senate goes blue now or in 2 years, depends on what that real level needs to be, where you need to be focusing a lot of attention to your estate planning. And this isn't to mention the overall impact of the economy, okay? We're not talking about that overall impact of the economy. In fact, we're going to save that for when Aaron's here to talk about that. But today is about you. Today is about what you need to be thinking and making a priority with this balanced power in Washington. You're not going to want to miss it right here on Life Planning 101 when we come back.
Segment 2, Life Planning 101. Angela has all kinds of great information for us this morning.
Yes, we're talking about the election results, but the lighter side of things. What this means for you, what you need to be doing for your planning, and what you need to be making a priority if we get a balance of power in Washington over these next 2 years. And you say, well, I've got 2 years to waste. I'm going to tell you, procrastination is going to kill you. So we've got 5 things you need to be paying attention to. And the first of which is to save as much as you can. So there's one constant in Washington, D.C. Nothing ever stays the same.
Right.
We agree with that, right? So if we don't like the results, we can just wait a few more years.
Sort of like the Texas weather.
That's right. Exactly. It's going to change. So due to tax reform, you've been given a gift of some extra cash flow to your bottom line. We've been telling you this since 2016, but it's a reality. I think what hit home for me, I was running a plan one time, and I just was trying to do this for a white paper that we were doing for a charitable strategy. And I said, why does this thing keep running out of money? It's supposed to net zero. I have $200,000 of income and $200,000 of expenses. Everything's growing at the same rate. Should net zero. And I couldn't figure it out. And then I went and looked in the system. I was like, oh, tax reform ends. For a $200,000 income earner in a family, it was going to increase their tax bill $4,000 in the year that tax reform ended. $4,000. Okay? So again, I'm not talking about wealthy individuals here. I'm just talking about that middle class people that are working hard and earning a good living, right? You have success issues. You do. If you're successful, you have success issues. If you have the American dream, you probably have success issues, right? So what does that mean for you? Right now, you need to be saving that $4,000. If you're choosing to live off of that $4,000, tax reform ends, what do you think is going to happen?
That tax is going to come back.
Yeah, you're going to end up owing that tax. So where's it going to come from? Is it going to go on your credit card bill because now you've accustomed to living a new lifestyle?
Sure.
Most people, that is the truth, right? So you better go ahead and start working on practicing tax reform now. It's a good idea, right? And tighten your belt and be able to put that extra money back for you. I'll tell you this, your future self is going to thank you if you do it, right? And even if the good happens and that tax reform doesn't end for you, are you going to be mad?
No.
No, you're not. So what do you have to lose, right? So number 5, the biggest thing, save as much as you can. Number 4, use low interest rates. Okay, I saw a 30-year mortgage last week quoted at 2.65%.
Wow.
I have 3 3/4 on my mortgage, and I thought that was good, right? Okay, I thought, wow, this is unbelievable. This is unbelievable. This is unprecedented. So maybe you need to refinance. General rule of thumb is if you've got a percentage point difference, then that typically means that you probably need to refinance. Now, if you're about to pay off your loan, you may want to speak to your advisor about what you can do. You know, debt is not always a bad thing, and that's something to keep in mind. It's not a bad thing for a lot of reasons, and a lot of people put debt on the wrong things just because they feel like they have to get their house paid off. You know, and that's not necessarily the item that you need to pay off.
Right.
If you have the cash sitting aside, you can always do that, right? But the reality is, if your money can even make 3.5% and you're paying the bank 2.5%, you're making money by having that mortgage and having your money, your cash sitting somewhere else,
yeah.
right? So that's huge. So, you know, maybe that's it. Maybe you've been considering some home improvements that need to be done. Okay, talk to your advisor. Maybe now's the time to do that. Because if you wait to do them and then you refinance, you could cost yourself a percentage point. Okay, and what does that really mean for you? So let's just take a $100,000 home. 1% of $100,000 is $1,000. So that doesn't really sound like a lot, but when you add it up over 30 years, it becomes a whole lot.
Yes.
Okay, and especially if it's a $500,000 home, right? That's $5,000 a year that first year that you're hitting that. So it's really important that you need to start thinking about that right now. And maybe the reason to refinance is just to loosen up your cash flow a little bit so you can be saving money. If you lower your payment, where's that extra money going to go? Not to spend, I hope.
Save.
Yeah, it should be to save. So now's the time to be asking to look at that overall picture and see what's best for your situation and make sure you're utilizing every single dollar you can over these next few years because you've been given these gifts, okay? Let's talk about, and by the way, with that being said, you know, what is the prospects of interest rates staying low? It's very perspective. However, if we do end up with a Democratic Senate, then they've already talked about they're going to redo all the Dodd-Frank stuff that was on the banks. So that means higher costs. Okay, so your mortgage to refinance is not going to be as easy, number one, and it's going to be higher cost to do so. So just be cognizant of that. It's very important. Number 3, get your investment risk right. How many times do you hear us say this?
Quite regularly.
Yes. Okay, so apparently, like we mentioned, the markets have liked this path to gridlock. It's been apparent, right? In fact, the markets were opening as I walked in the door today. The Dow was up over 1,000 points.
Wow.
Yeah, that's huge, right? So, and of course, there's the prospect of a vaccine, which is good. That's back on the table. I'm sure that's pushing today, but last week that had nothing to do with it.
Right.
So, why is that happening? Well, Aaron was in here. He did a great show. He talked about why the markets are addicted to the Fed, right? The Fed has pumped trillions of dollars into the markets since 2008 and 2009. Okay, there was actually a great article out this week by MarketWatch. I read it last night, and it was talking about if you took the trillions of dollars and the quantitative easing the Fed had pumped in, the markets would be worth about half what they're worth right now. Wow.
That is
Wow.
Huge.
Yes, it is. So what they see as perspective is that we're going to have more money pumped into the economy to keep us afloat while we get through this coronavirus issue, right? So that's probably what you're seeing. But will that end? That's the biggest question. How will it end? What will happen? Will the markets end up overheated? When will it happen? There will be a pullback. You're hearing those words out of my mouth.
Absolutely.
That's the one thing I can guarantee is the markets are going to pull back at some point. So does that mean that you don't need to be invested right now? Because what if today's the best day to start being invested for the next 5 years? You don't want to miss out that, do
No.
you? Okay. What if it's the worst day?
Don't want to miss out on that either.
Right. So get your risk right. That's what you need to do. Make sure it's timed up with your money so that you can make sure that your portfolio matches your objectives and you have a manager that's being proactive for you behind the scenes to do that. Because, sometimes we forget what the markets really are. And I think it's so important. We think that this is just this fictitious thing you see on CNBC and you see this crazy Kramer dude slamming stuff. And it's not that. These are mom and pop businesses. They were originated somewhere by a mom and pop shop, right? And now they're just worth more.
A whole lot more.
That's what they are. So if things get overheated in the markets, there will be a pullback. But the worst thing about that pullback is you making an emotional decision when that happens and not using wisdom. So get your risk right so you can sleep at night, no matter if the Dow is going up 1,000 points today or if it's going down 1,000 points today. So more to come right here on Life Planning 101. You don't want to miss out election results and what you need to be doing for your plan.
Final segment, Life Planning 101, right here on KTX KDY. Angela, you have 2 more points to share with our listeners.
Yes, that's right. We have election results. Kind of, sort of, maybe not. Who knows? But as it sees right now, we're talking about the perspective of 2 more years of a very big gridlock in Washington and what that means for your plan. And the fact that if you have procrastinated, you need to stop. You got 5 things that you need to really be focusing on. And in the first couple segments of the show, we talked about saving as much as you can, utilizing low interest rates as they are today, and getting your investment risk right. So let's talk about number 2 thing you need to be doing. Take Uncle Sam out of your estate plan. Take him out. So if you want Uncle Sam to potentially slap your family with a 40% plus, that's where it's at right now, plus estate tax, you don't have to worry about this one, okay? So
Just move on.
Just move on. If not, this needs to be a hot priority with anyone with an estate at least over ... And the reason I say ... is because the proposal originally was that we would just cut where we're at in half now. So the 11.58 million per person would be cut in half and still indexed for inflation. So that'd be a $6 million deal. But Hillary, along with almost all the other preliminary runners in the Democratic election, wanted it to be $3.5 million. Okay, so depends on what your belief is about what Joe Biden would or would not sign off on, right? And so that's where you really need to be thinking is, do I need to be thinking about my estate plan? How much do I really want to protect? What kind of risks do I want to take on? Gridlock is probably going to give you 2 more years to do this. Now, to get things moved out of your estate and do things. However, senators die, okay? Georgia may not come out all red. And I think it's important for you to remember that if Georgia comes out 1 red, 1 blue, then that means we have a 50-50 in the Senate. And do you know who the tiebreaker is?
The vice president.
That's correct. Okay, so in other words, we're blue.
Right.
Okay, so it's extremely important that you give this planning some big time consideration right now. And, it's really difficult because everybody's at a different stage of life, right? If you're accumulating, you can't really tie up your assets because you're still accumulating assets. Well, there might be a way to have your cake and eat it too. People always think that I have to just give everything away to get it out of my estate. That's not necessarily true at all. So we've done extensive planning with business owners, farmers, and ranchers for years in this area, and flexibility is our theme. So, the biggest thing is that you just need to take Uncle Sam out of the plan. And if you aren't doing that or haven't done it, it needs to be your priority.
Right.
If you care about your family. Okay. or what they get, right? So, and last week we did a great show on that. We talked about farmers and ranchers, and particularly around that area, and it's huge. So it does need to be there, but it isn't the number one issue.
And that is?
Diversify your taxes.
Okay.
So you hear about diversifying your investments all the time, right? Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Why do we do that with our taxes? We do it. We as Americans, we're told to save one place. Where's that one place we're told to put our money? In our 401k,
yes, 401k,
right?
Yes.
Put it in your 401k. Your employer will match it. And guess what? When you retire, you have this big old nest egg. Well, what they don't tell you is that full nest egg is fully taxable, right?
Right.
Okay. So let's say that, by the way, did you know that we are literally at the lowest tax rates in modern history?
Really?
Yes, we are. They've been as high as 70%.
Wow.
Okay, so imagine 70% of your retirement going away.
So $1 million turns into $300,000.
Would you be okay with that?
No.
No, you wouldn't, okay? Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I do see this little debt calculator. You could Google it if you want to, and it keeps climbing. I don't care for blue or red or what we are in the future. That doesn't matter. Taxes are going to go up. So why not use these low tax rates right now to diversify? Maybe that means that extra $4,000 that you have, you use it to pay taxes now to get out twice as much money than you'll be able to in a few years.
Right.
Right? And let it grow. We've been doing tons and tons of IRA to Roth IRA conversions this year. I wish I had a number because, I'm telling you, we've been doing tons of it, right? Because we know about these ticking tax bombs. There's a joke out there about how many politicians it takes to change a light bulb. Do you know, Terry?
How many?
The answer is 2. So there's one to change it and the other to change it back again. Okay, so this is the normal way in Washington, except for the fact that we live in interesting times. What I mean by that is that we have a tax reform right now. It's likely to change back. And then maybe it could change back, and maybe that's what people are hoping on. But to the point of the fact that we have an unsurmountable deficit, our workforce population is predicted on all accounts, all assumptions, to keep declining. And we have the lowest tax rates in modern history. Taxes are going to go up.
Sure.
And you have to know that. So the only difference Washington makes about that answer is how much are they going to go up? Right? So, it's now or never. Really, it is now or never to diversify your taxes. Maybe you have highly appreciated stock. There's been proposals by the Biden administration that capital gains would be taxed at ordinary income tax rates. Think about that.
Right.
Okay, if everything's taxed the same, there's no tax preferential on any item. If someone dies and they lose the ability to their estate would have a step up in basis on assets, which is another proposal, that makes everything taxable virtually, right? So how do you get around that? That's a question, right?
That's a $1 million question.
That's a $1 million question, no pun intended. So, maybe you're going to have a lot of pension income in retirement. Maybe you're going to rely on mostly for Social Security in your investments. Well, if your investments all of a sudden get a different tax treatment, does it make your Social Security more taxable?
Possibly.
Ooh, that's a possibility, right? So you have very, very little time to be working on this. You can make some things tax-free instruments and diversify that tax situation, but the clock is ticking. The clock is ticking, and it may end in December.
Yes.
Scary, isn't it? So if you haven't been doing something the last 4 years, I recommend that you do something about it, because time waits for no one, as Benjamin Franklin said. Time is money, right?
Time is money.
So the next 2 years may be the most valuable 2 years of your entire life, and you can't look at that. The question is you're going to either spend it or you're going to invest it, and that choice is yours. My name is Angela Robinson with Kennedy Financial Services right here in the town of Eastland, Texas. God bless every one of our listeners, and God bless America.
Thank you for joining us for Life Planning 101, brought to you by Kennedy Financial Services of Eastland. Tune in every Monday morning at 8:30 on KATX and KWBY, and again on Saturday morning at 9 o'clock on KATX and KWBY for more Life Planning 101.
Advisory services offered through Smart Money Group, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Securities offered through Calton & Associates, Incorporated, member FINRA SIPC. Kennedy Financial Services, Incorporated is an independent of Calton & Associates, Incorporated, and Smart Money Group, LLC.